we do want to still be efficient in the exercise selection that we're picking for building muscle, because in that way, and I guess you can define efficient in different ways. Just the way that I think about it is like, you want to be picking movements that you can, progress in, right? And you can have good technique, right? You can build within that technique, and still be able to have stability within that too, and be working the muscles that you are trying to grow versus, doing a ton, like doing, a deadlift, which you're working a ton of different muscles at the same time, but that might not be the best approach if your goal is to build your glutes, right? You might want to do an RDL instead, like a Romanian deadlift, so you can have that tension throughout the muscle, right? Strength, I like to think about, or strength training, right, is moving an object or moving that object from point A to point B as fast or efficient as, not necessarily as fast, but as efficient as possible, right? Versus training for hypertrophy, you're looking to get as much tension throughout that muscle so that you can, build new muscle fibers, right? You can recruit more muscle fibers, build more tissue literally within your body. So that's something to think about too. And then like with hypertrophy training, it's important that you do get close to failure on your lifts, because we know that mechanical tension is the number one way to build muscle. If you are a bodybuilder, for example, and you are looking to just like, you don't care about getting stronger and you just want to build as much muscle as possible, that doesn't mean that you don't necessarily train in the lower rep ranges or go through phases where you do have more strength or neurological training, because when you do that, you basically get your body to be more efficient and your muscle fibers to be more efficient at recruiting those muscle fibers, so that when you go back to that hypertrophy style training, you can actually lift more because you've trained your nervous system to say, hey, like I'm used to this heavier weight. So there is, and the opposite goes for strength athletes too, like even power lifters or Olympic weightlifters, like they still need to, like you were just saying, they still need to work in higher rep ranges for certain periods of time, but that doesn't mean that most of their training's there, but they should go through periods of that, because, building muscle as well and having a bigger muscle is always gonna, having a bigger muscle will lead to getting stronger. A bigger muscle has the potential to get stronger, right? So that is something that, strength training athletes, even if they're powerlifters or whatever, they still train in those high rep ranges at certain periods of time. But it's all about specificity and what your main goal is. One other thing I do want to mention with strength training, especially if you are just kind of someone who is looking to optimize their body composition, you do want to get stronger, but that's not your main goal. You do want to, build muscle. I would say that, and this is kind of where I'm at, like, I don't necessarily care about, like, I did go through a period of time where I cared about, like, upping my deadlift, right? Like, how much could I lift on my deadlift? And now I'm at a point where I'm like, I don't really care anymore at this point in time, but maybe that'll change down the line. But it's also important to realize too, like as you get older, if you are training and doing a lot of strength training in those lower rep ranges with tons and tons of weights, like heavy weights, that's going to be taxing on your joints, right? And so that's what we want to consider too, is like you were saying, you shouldn't always be lifting super, super heavy weights, because that has a tax on not only on your nervous system if you overdo it, but on your joints, your ligaments, all of that. And so that could be hindering, longevity. Even though muscle building and strength training is really important for longevity, it's one of those things where it's like anything, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, right? So just keeping that in mind as well.